Right, so TNA Wrestling, where do we even begin? Because maybe in the last 48 hours, we have seen one of the biggest LOL TNA moments in the company's entire history, to be quite frank. And it comes at a time where TNA were really building back up some goodwill and were in one of the best places they've ever been in as a company statistics wise, but the booking and the on-screen product, it's the exact same it's always been. It's never gonna be good, and it's never ever gonna be taken seriously because of stuff like this and the fact that Mike Santana has already lost his TNA World Championship. That is the main thing we're going to be talking about in this video here, so like and subscribe. But you're probably wondering why I haven't mentioned TNA at all since Bound For Glory took place. In fact, you're probably wondering why you haven't heard a single thing about TNA from anyone since Bound For Glory took place, and that's because TNA, since Bound For Glory, has been on hiatus. I'm not sure the reason why. It must be to do with their taping schedule, but right after Bound For Glory, TNA went on a hiatus away from TV, and there's been no Impact for a month now until the one that took place just a couple of days ago on Thursday. But yeah, there's literally been nothing from TNA right after their biggest show of the year, with their biggest attendance ever, with one of their biggest moments in years, with Santana winning the TNA title, and then they just disappear for a month and don't ride that wave of momentum. Listen, I am not totally against an off-season for wrestling and wrestlers having a bit of a break. It's not a bad thing that TNA have done this. It's just the fact that none of the other big two companies are doing this, and TNA seemingly are trying to present themselves as the second biggest company. They are never going to be that if they're taking 1 month break from TV whilst the other big companies are still running shows. TNA fans are going to sit there and wait for TNA to come back. No, they're going to go and watch one of your competitors. And once again, following such a big moment like Bound For Glory and Santana winning the belt, I feel like TNA having TV right after then would have been really good for them, because people maybe would have been actually invested in it and excited to see what Santana's going to do with the belt. But now that is absolutely not the case, because TNA did indeed finally return from their hiatus this past Thursday, as they had a live edition of Impact Wrestling on the Thursday like I said, and then last night on the Friday, the day after, they had their Turning Point pay-per-view. So I'm going to be discussing both and everything going on with TNA right now, and why the company might just be dead in the water and cold at this point. We'll start talking about this TNA Impact recent episode first. We'll keep this one briefer than the Turning Point review, of course, but this show opens with Mike Santana coming out, cutting a babyface promo, his first promo as the world champion. And yeah, what an exciting time for TNA, a great representative for the company. So I wonder who his first title defense is gonna be. Well, it's revealed on this show to be Ryan Nemeth. That's right, Ryan Nemeth challenging for the TNA World title. Something's never changed with this company. The main event scene will just never feel like a main event scene in TNA. We just have to be honest at this point. Then there's a backstage segment with Impact Knockouts champion Kalani Jordan, of course from NXT. She's talking with some of the TNA girls who have their eyes on the belts. And then there's some NXT Authority stuff with Santino, Ava, and Ariana Grace. Truly could not care less for this authority figure stuff. As we get our first match of the show, up first next is Danny Luna up against Indy Hartwell. This has been brewing for a couple of months now, as Danny Luna turned heel a couple of months ago on Indy, and Danny Luna is maybe the only person on the entire TNA roster that I am truly invested in, and they have an okay-ish match here, but it isn't really able to go anywhere, as Danny Luna tries to get a chair involved, but it backfires and Indy Hartwell goes crazy on her and starts attacking her with the chair. She gets disqualified, and a match is made between the two, a no DQ match for Turning Point, so we'll check that out as well. This was just done to create a future match for the very next day. We get an in-ring promo with The System, where the main thing that happens in this is that JDC, otherwise known as Fandango, announces that he's probably going to be retiring from wrestling soon, so fair play to him for making it this far in his career, a long and healthy career. As the Rascals then interrupts this segment and they want a match with The System tomorrow at Turning Point. They want it to be a 4v4 though, but noticeably there's only 3 of them, to which they say the 4th Rascal will appear with them tomorrow. I wonder who that's gonna be. We get some backstage stuff with the Hardys and Mustafa Ali's crew before it then recaps a digital exclusive of none other than BDE, who interrupted AJ Francis' segment, and AJ Francis put him through a table, and they're facing each other at Turning Point. I don't get why this wasn't on the show and it's just a digital exclusive. But yeah, shout out to Brandon for getting more work with TNA. He did really great in that Call Your Shot gauntlet, so I'm looking forward to seeing this singles match here with him and AJ. He's backstage feeling his wounds when Leon Slater comes in to help him out and give him some advice, but Rich Swann then interrupts and Leon Slater and Rich Swann make a match with each other for Turning Point. As up next, it's Cedric Alexander up against Jason Hotch. This was just a classic 3-minute TV match where there's nothing really of note to talk about in it. Cedric wins this match, which leads to Mustafa Ali's crew attacking him after the match, and then the Hardys come to make the save for Cedric, and we've got ourselves a 3v3 now booked for Turning Point as well. They are just cramming in as many things as they can for the pay-per-view the very next day. They could have at least done a couple of episodes of TV before they went to a pay-per-view, but nah, just the one. Then next up, Kalani Jordan defends her TNA Knockouts title against Heather by Elegance from the Elegance brand. I thought this match was just fine. It was the longest match on the entire show, clocking in at 9 minutes. A bit clunky at times, and the finish was a tiny bit of a mess with M by Elegance getting involved, but it was what it was. It was maybe the only real match on this entire show, which really does say something. We get some promos backstage from the Knockouts tag division of TNA, as there's going to be a 3-way Knockouts tag match for the belts tomorrow at Turning Point. We then have an Elijah concert, yes, an Elijah concert in Big 2025, because that's what people want to see, which is then interrupted by Mustafa Ali. They have a confrontation, Ali takes him out and smashes the guitar over him. Great, we're getting Mustafa Ali versus Elijah as a future TNA feud. How exciting. Anyway, up next, it's that hugely hyped up world title match as Mike Santana makes his first title defense against Ryan Nemeth. Nemeth with a pre-match heat promo is dominated by Santana right out the gate in this match, and then it's over. As it shows Dolph Ziggler backstage about to make his entrance to accompany his brother, but then it shows him being attacked by a mystery masked man before Santana is then attacked by NXT C Team, the Evolve crew. Just literally a bunch of unnamed NXT jobbers come in the ring and attack Santana, and the match is now a no contest. It is the most specific group of NXT jobbers ever, just a bunch of guys who are doing nothing on NXT TV right now, so NXT or WWE clearly thought, hey, let's get some reps in and just go to TNA and do some stuff there. And it's following this senseless attack from the NXT C Team and the NXT Dorks that Frankie Kazarian, one half of the Call Your Shot Gauntlet winner, comes out, cashes in his Call Your Shot, and wins the title from Santana in less than a minute in front of 200 people to no heat whatsoever. Ice cold. An ice cold moment, an ice cold crowd who couldn't care less about what they're watching right now, and I truly couldn't believe what I had seen. I didn't realize that TNA was still capable of moments like this. It really feels like there's been a while since they just undid so much of their hard work like they just did here. Santana officially only had one title defense, which was against Ryan Nemeth just a minute earlier in a 2-minute match that went to a no contest. And yeah, he lost his title on the first episode of Impact back from their hiatus, his first appearance since winning the title. Man, you cannot make that up. It sucks for Kazarian as well, because Kaz is a guy who was in TNA at his prime and was doing awesome work, and he was always one of those guys who was so consistent for TNA and so great for them, but never quite reached the world title. So it's nice that he got the title here because he never won it in his prime, but it's always going to be remembered for the fact that he beat Santana for it in one of the worst TNA decisions ever. It's just insane. Mike Santana was the champion for only a month. He won it at Bound For Glory after it had already been prolonged winning it. He should have won it already at the New York show a month earlier, but they chose not to. They chose Bound For Glory instead, just to then go on hiatus and have him lose it on his first defense. Wow, real great booking there from TNA. At least if he won it in his hometown of New York, he could have at least defended it once or twice, but no. No, that can't be a thing with TNA apparently. And thus closes that episode of TNA Impact. Man, what is the point in caring about or investing in anything in this company? Wow, 50 steps back from TNA, truly. But anyway, as I mentioned, Turning Point was also last night, the day after TNA Impact this past Friday, so let's talk about this show as well, and talk about if it was just as dramatic as the TNA Impact that took place the night before, because believe it or not, there was definitely some huge drama, with some potential talks of Santana not showing up to the event, but we will get there. As the show opens with TNA Knockouts Championship action, Kalani Jordan defending her belt once again, now against M by Elegance of the Elegance brand. She defended against Heather the day before, and now she's doing it against M. I didn't think this match was bad or anything, it was a pretty average match, and I just kind of hate to say it though, but the TNA Knockouts division has definitely faced a major hit in quality, and this low-key just feels like a developmental title right now. It feels like its only purpose is to give Kalani more experience, but as a division, it's probably the weakest the Knockouts division has been in quite a while. Like I said, the match was fine, it was definitely better than the women's title match at Bound For Glory, but I really do hate to say that, because I've always said that Impact, going back to those days, has had a great roster for the women's division, one of the best, if not the best, in all of wrestling. But yeah, losing names like Deonna Purrazzo and now Jordan Grace over the years has clearly hurt the division. I feel like Dani Luna is someone that really could have filled that spot, but we'll talk about her later and how they clearly don't want to do that. But yeah, Kalani Jordan retains her belt here. Next up though is AJ Francis up against the boy BDE. Obviously this was teased earlier on the Impact show, and I thought this was actually a really nice David versus Goliath story that was being told here. Brandon fighting his way up, they were playing into the whole experience aspect that AJ has over Brandon, and credit to Brandon because he did really well in this match as well, and just looks a natural out there right after the Koya Shot Gauntlet where he looks just as good, so fair play to BDE here. He takes some crazy bumps in this one, like a mad apron bump he did at one point, which really looked like it hurt. Of course, AJ Francis gets the win here with the experience edge over BDE, but if I'm TNA, I am definitely looking to get BDE on the show regularly, no doubt. Anyway, we then go to a backstage interview with Steve Macklin, the international champion. He is meant to be facing up with Santana tonight to take on Kazarian, the new world champion, and Nick Nemeth, but they allude to the fact that Mike Santana is not in the building and nobody's been able to get a hold of him. And interestingly enough, this is actually a story that TNA tried to send around to the dirt sheets and to the wrestling media as if it was a real story, but it is obviously just an angle. It's all a work, and just a weird one at that, a weird tactic from TNA to try get some buzz again after such a horrible decision with Santana dropping the belt. Macklin cuts a babyface promo here anyway, where he just says, you know, he'll go out there alone for the tag match if he needs to. And next up is Dani Luna up against Indy Hartwell in their no DQ match, in maybe the only story in TNA that I kind of care about. And the match starts quick here as they begin fighting outside as the bell rings and weapons are involved right out the gate. Dani Luna chokes Indy out with a screwdriver and hits her super duper German as she continues to dominate with weapons. They do some spots with a ladder where Luna is spine busted onto it in brutal fashion, and then Hartwell elbow drops Dani Luna through a table and gets the win with her finisher on the top of a chair. A cool and gnarly finish and a good match here, but the wrong winner in my opinion. Indy Hartwell just challenged for the belt in a pretty unimpressive match at Bound For Glory, so she didn't need this win here, and Dani Luna is someone I've said over and over that TNA should really be pushing, and despite this recent shift in character and her heel turn, it doesn't seem like TNA wants to do that at all and wants to invest in her and focus on her whatsoever, which is a real shame because she's probably the best in-ring worker in the entire division. And Dani Luna really dominated for long in this match and went through far less punishment than Indy just to lose, so yeah, it's not really looking great for the future of the Knockouts division, but still, credit to these two, this was a fun match and easily my favorite of the night. As next up is Knockouts tag team action, Tessa Blanchard is here and she's teaming up with Victoria Crawford, but she doesn't look dressed to wrestle. As then there's Lying Lee and Zaya Brookside, who go under the tag name of the Angel Warriors, and these are the two teams that are challenging the Knockouts tag champs, the Inspiration. Tessa Blanchard on the mic before it begins addresses the elephant in the room and says she's not medically cleared to compete tonight, so Victoria Crawford will instead be teaming with Mila Moore, who seems to be a new TNA Knockout signing. Fair enough, I thought the match overall was pretty whatever though, and as much as I really hate to say this, I really do, the match probably could have used someone experienced like Tessa in there, as this match kind of dragged its way through the motions. I thought Mila Moore looked alright actually, probably one of the better people in this match alongside Xia Brookside in my opinion, as the Inspiration retain their belts here in a pretty meh match. And speaking of meh matches, up next we have a 6-man tag, as it's the Hardys and the Cedric Alexander, I don't know why I said the before that name, but whatever, against Mustafa Ali and his crew. This was one of the longer matches on the card, and in my opinion one of the more skippable matches on the card. I was not really invested or focused on this match whatsoever. The Hardys are just seemingly going through the motions at this point, and I'm not really the biggest fan of Mustafa Ali's stable that he's got going. I like Ali himself, but I've never really been big on his political campaign gimmick he's always had. There's some ref shenanigans as Special Agent Zero gets involved in the match and weapons get involved, and Order 4 get the win with some tainted tactics. It was a whatever skippable multi-man tag. So here's another one for you. It's a 4v4, the Rascals up against the System with the returning Desmond Xavier back with the Rascals again. Obviously formerly known as Wes Lee, great to see him back here, but other than that, I thought this was just another forgettable multi-man, to be honest. I definitely thought it was a lot better than the other multi-man tag. I was a lot more invested in this one. This one was okay, but still just quite forgettable and skippable. You get your big multi-man spots and the Rascals are flying about anywhere, which was pretty fun, and they do get the win here in the end. Better than the other tag for sure. Maybe I'm being a little hard on this one. It is actually a little better than I remember, to be fair. As next up, it's X Division Championship action. The man from Bradford himself, Leon Slater, is here defending against Rich Swann. And I think very unsurprisingly when I say this, this was a good one and one of the better matches of the night. Leon Slater, easily the best guy TNA has right now in terms of the entire package, ring work and mic work and look. This is the top star in TNA right now, Leon Slater. And he's definitely not going to be in TNA for long. He'll be gone next year, for sure. Rich Swann is a good, consistent performer too, former 205 Live guy and Cruiserweight champion. These two guys would have gone crazy in the Cruiserweight Classic, imagine that. Both guys had some good moments here. It wasn't as spot heavy as other Slater matches I've seen in TNA, but the crowd were into it and I was into it too. I enjoyed this one, as there's a near fall from a cool Slater combo that ends in a Styles clash, as he then follows that up with the Swanton 450 to get the win and retain his X Division belt. Nice one here, man. As now it's time for the main event, as Steve Macklin comes out, as it's meant to be him and Santana against Kaz and Ziggler. But then there's an awkward silence after he comes out, as Santana doesn't enter before the heel team then comes out, and Macklin on the mic says, well, it looks like it's just me, screw it, and attacks them as the bell rings. So it looks like this is a handicap match and they're really running this angle. Weirdly enough, early on Ryan Nemeth gets involved, so it's a 3-on-1 technically, but then of all people at ringside, Mara Sade comes out and attacks Nemeth with a super kick to even the odds, or make it back to 2v1 I should say. Mara Sade, that's another person who I think should be much nearer to the Knockouts belt than where she is right now. As the heels take control over Macklin, numbers game advantage, yada yada, as Macklin does well to fend them off and endure, but then it cuts to outside as it shows Santana arriving to the building and he gets in there and joins the match. I really don't know why they did any of this. Why did he need to join late? But yeah, confusion aside, he goes on a rampage and gets the win pretty quickly after coming into the match, pinning Kaz. I just don't know what they're doing anymore. I don't know why any of that was necessary. I don't know why they've done an angle that made it seem like Santana was no-showing and fed it to the media like it was real, just for him to show up anyway and have a pretty mid-tag match in the main event that doesn't really matter. And I especially don't get why they made him lose the world title in the first place. But then, just as I thought it was over, Nick Nemeth then teases cashing in his Call Your Shot, and then the NXT Social Outcasts come out and attack everyone in the ring again. A bunch of TNA guys like some jobbers and Santino Marella and the Hardys all come out to try and attack them, but they get beaten up and the show closes with NXT Retribution standing over the TNA roster. And yeah, what is the point in getting invested in anything in this company. With this NXT jobber group, it's just so obvious now how WWE sees TNA. Like, it's such a specific group of people to send here. It's nobody who is doing anything of note on NXT TV right now, as TNA now is just NXT's OVW, it seems. If they ain't doing anything on NXT, then just send them over to TNA to get some experience and get their reps in, with no real reward being reaped for TNA. I give the show a 6 to a 6.5 out of 10. Not a bad show by any means. The best matches of the night were Danny Luna up against Indy Hartwell was my favorite, Slater and Swan, and BDE versus AJ Francis too. I thought Kalani versus M was aight as well, but everything else was fairly skippable, with the main event scene right now in particular just being a total dud, and I couldn't care less about it. The NXT jobber invasion is less than riveting stuff, and while this show has some nice stuff and TNA has some storylines going on, after that Santana stuff, it's just like, what's the point of getting invested and caring about anything? Santana had a great organic long slow build, which they then prolonged, not pulling the trigger at New York like they probably should have, and instead opting to do it at their big show Bound For Glory, which felt like a good decision at the time, but then they just undid it in a heatless moment following an attack from a bunch of unnamed jobbers who no one even recognizes. I feel like a precedent has been set by them doing that, and it's just like, what's the point in getting invested in anything or anyone if it's just going to end up like this? It's going to end up not mattering at all. Obviously, people have speculated that Mike Santana is going to end up in WWE. People were speculating that he was going to show up at SmackDown tonight to face The Miz, or LA Knight, I believe it was, in the tournament to face John Cena. Imagine that. But yeah, I can only guess the reason why they've dropped the title off of Santana is because he's maybe going to WWE, or his contract is expiring and he's not interested in re-signing. But if that's the case, that his contract was coming up, then why on earth would you give him the belt when you're going off of TV for a month? Why? Or better yet, if you were really that desperate to give him the belt, then just do it in New York like everyone thought was gonna happen initially, and at that point, at least he'd be able to defend it and carry around the damn thing. But no. Following Mike Santana winning that belt at TNA Bound For Glory 2025, he appeared on only one episode of TNA Impact with the belt, and it was to lose it. Yeah, everything in TNA now feels like a total waste of time, and I don't know how invested I am in this company anymore, and the next time you hear me talk about TNA will probably be when something like this happens again, because trust me, I am not watching their weekly show or pay-per-views when stuff like this is just gonna happen. Godspeed if you enjoy TNA, but I feel like a moment like this is just proof that TNA is never gonna get any better. They'll never be the #2 wrestling company. They'll always be LOL TNA. But wow, regardless, that's it from me here. I've been going for nearly 22 minutes talking about TNA. What an absolute SHIT show that TNA have found themselves in. But yeah, man, like this video if you enjoyed, and subscribe with notifications on so you never miss a video on the Top 10 Wrestling channel. Leave a comment down below what your thoughts were on the Impact show and at Turning Point and everything surrounding TNA and this Mike Santana drama. I feel like TNA has low-key self-destructed and destroyed themselves with this. I just don't really know what to say anymore. But that's it from me. Goodbye, and keep on rolling. I'll see you all in the next one. Bloody hell.